Welcome to the Only Dream Big podcast, starring your host, Donnie Bedney. Only Dream Big is a podcast where Donnie will share tips and experiences on different topics, such as acquisition entrepreneurship, human capital, and the future of the workforce. He is the president of PSP Metrics and has been in the assessment and human capital management industry for more than 15 years, with the goal of driving change through people. As your guide on dreaming big, let's hear from the man himself.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Only Dream Big pod. I am your host, Donnie Bedney. So excited to have a conversation with a budding friend of mine from my travels to Pittsburgh regularly, Dr. Margaret Larkins-Pettigrew. Margaret, thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm so excited about being with you, Donnie. You know, our first encounter was so intense, but so educational. So you're right. This is a budding relationship because I think that we have some synergy as it relates to all of these things we're interested in. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so great. As you know, and probably those who have listened, to the show for a while, my wife being an OBGYN, I am not a physician, but it's amazing how many other OBGYNs I just kind of attract into my life. It's almost like I put off this OBGYN energy or something else, but I just end up with, it's almost like the alchemist. I just have a bunch of physicians that end up in my life. So very excited to have you on the show today and talk about your experience in dreams and all of that. And so, just want to start off, obviously you are playing and have played large roles in large health systems and had, kind of being driving impact, with communities and for those, and to be able to do that from a physician lens, can you kind of take us back in your life, and at what point, let's even get more specific, did you actually kind of dream about being a physician, and as you were dreaming about being a physician, did you see yourself as an executive leader within like health systems at that point, or was that just something that as you were pursuing this passion and dream of being a physician, you just kind of fell into the leadership roles?
Wow. So I really have to start back to when I made that switch or that hook. So,
Okay.
and it was I don't know if you know, I was a nurse prior to becoming a physician. So
I
I
did not
spent
know that.
16 years critical care nurse.
Wow.
A Black nurse in the early, 70s. Very, very interesting time, and really had a lot of reason to think about the issue around deep diversity, equity, inclusion. Really didn't call it that, but at that time called it advocacy for my people. And so I saw so much as a nurse and was treated, so differently. I mean, think about that time, and take care of folks who said, I don't want you taking care of me because you're Black, and living through those experiences, and then watching some of the great care, but some of the poor care that people who look like me were getting, and even people who didn't look like me, but who were in poverty and homeless. And I at that time I knew I wanted to do something that was in the advocacy space that would help other people. So that's kind of where it started. And so I, as I was working as a nurse in those critical spaces, I would see decisions made that I didn't feel comfortable with. Remember, this is high level, very intense burnout situations.
Sure.
And I was working in LA a lot, and I was, and so I would see some of those critical cases come in, some of the gang banging stuff that was going on.
Sure.
And but I would see the difference in the treatment that people were receiving, not only as patients, but the difference in how their caregivers, their family members, their community members were being treated at that time. And so I knew that I wanted to be in this advocacy space. And so I would talk to some of the other physicians, and most time it was not physicians of color because there weren't many around.
Sure.
And so I would talk about some of the cases that I was working on, and I was very specific about just very specific about what was going on with the patients, asking them questions around the actual diagnosis and some of the critical elements of what was happening physiologically and pathophysiologically. And I
Okay.
was being told by these white folks that I, who were very grateful colleagues to me.
Yeah.
They would say to me, "You don't need to know that. You know, why do you need to know that? That's your nurse. You know, I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
you've been there. You don't need to know.
Oh man.
You know." And so, and I thought, well, I think I do need to know that because
Hmm.
I felt like I could give better care if I
Sure.
knew more about what was happening. So, but another colleague said to me that you ask so many curious questions,
Hmm.
you probably should think about medicine
Wow.
because and then I was thinking, and then one day another one of the colleagues said to me, you don't need to know that you are not a physician.
Mm.
And I said, I need to be a physician, obviously. Right now, I'm in my 30s already.
Wow.
So I'm in my 30s. I'm in, I think it was like 34 or so. So to think about that, making that book, that change was pretty significant at that
Yeah.
age with 3 children and a husband who was at then time. He was actually the vice president of Tuskegee University.
Oh
Right.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we were there. We were living the dream related to
Hmm.
being in that space where we saw, everybody who's somebody,
Sure.
who was coming through there.
Yeah.
And I just,
Amazing HBCU. Wow. I did
yes,
not know
yes.
that.
So
Yeah.
my children, sitting with all of those icons at the time, Desmond Tutu and, just all these folks.
Yeah.
And I, of course, then I like, okay, I need to know more about my
Yeah.
history. We were in a household where we looked at a lot of things that happened in our past, and we're training our children to, think about their futures but not making sure they knew their past.
Sure.
And so I was really in a place that I said, I need to make a change in order to
Hmm.
be the advocate that I need to be.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was and so my husband said, well, it's getting late. Meaning,
Yeah.
so if you're gonna make this change,
Yeah.
and I think you better make this change sooner than later. And
Sure.
just such a supportive, guy. So that's the whole. I always talk about choosing the right mate.
Yeah.
Very essential that you take time to choose the right mate because
Yeah.
this is a phenomenal guy who said, I'm going to back you 100%. This is something you want to do, and you're doing it for all of us because
Yeah.
the whole philosophy about what it would do for not only our family but our communities. And so we had already thought through that, and so
Mhm.
I decided that I was going to go to med school. So
Wow. Wow. Well, I mean, oof, so many directions that we could go based on that. But thank you for sharing that. Why don't we, if you can, can you unpack, um, some of the elements of that decision, right? And frankly, maybe even the environment. Just as you're sharing about, Tuskegee and getting some of that feedback from physicians. I mean, you can go back to the history, right? Like with syphilis and like,
mhm,
the Tuskegee experiment and all of those pieces. But specifically, as you think about making a decision to switch careers, granted, still in healthcare, but to go back to school to become a physician, almost in your mid 30s, it just begin like the lessons that, I think that some of our listeners can garner, because I'm sure some of them may be, in their 30s, maybe they're in their 40s, maybe even 50s. Just seems to be a great example of, when you have a passion or feel a calling or purpose for doing something, there really is no timeline, right? Like the perfect time
absolutely
was exactly then,
my time.
right?
Right. So, we always take these life journeys, and I think that people need to think about their own experience as a life journey. Because,
Mm.
the only a couple things we're sure, but we're
Yeah,
born and we die, right? So
sure.
when we think about how much we're going to invest in that time,
Hmm.
then what do we want to do? Do we want to um, be an expert in something,
Hmm.
or do we want to be significant, so for instance,
Mm.
and that's the difference because you can
Hmm.
say, redefine your joy. What's going to bring you joy?
Hmm.
And so, and many of us don't take the time to redefine what that means to us.
Mm.
And I think that, a lot of that's experience that we had, being at Tuskegee and being, I worked in Johnny Andrews where they did the
Hmm.
Tuskegee experiment. I
Yeah.
saw children of the folks that, the children of the men
Yeah.
and women
Yeah.
had been infected because, the
Wow.
men, when they went home with syphilis, it wasn't like they weren't giving it to their wives, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah.
And then the children they were having, were congenital syphilis, children. So anyway,
Wow.
so I think that the time for me was the time for me,
Yeah.
and it, no matter what, and I can tell you that experience going back, there were folks in my class who were 40, 50 years old,
Hmm.
and so there's no time, there's really no time for you. That's my
Hmm.
time, right? So
Yeah.
it's just all about when I knew that I needed something else to
Yeah.
make me whole, right?
Yeah.
And in making that decision was difficult. It was
Sure.
difficult for me because I had a family. I had a husband who was very busy.
Yeah.
He was in that academic space, and he was moving toward being a president of a college and university.
Wow.
I had three children. You
Yeah.
know, we lived in Tuskegee, Alabama. We drove our kids to school 50 miles both ways. I mean,
Wow.
literally, to make sure that they had the best schools they can go to in Alabama.
Yeah.
Okay?
Absolutely.
So there was a lot of challenges related to, can I do this? How can I do this?
Hmm.
Just based on where I was in my life, my family life. It had
Yeah.
nothing to do with how academically I was prepared. It was
Sure.
all about, could I really do this
Yeah.
financially? And
All
so
that.
how did I do this financially? Because I'm sure people thought about that. So
Man.
I enlisted.
Mm.
I
Mm.
enlisted. I enlisted in the military. I'm still
Mm.
young. And I had a wonderful guy Colonel Mozik, who was in
Hmm.
he's Army, but I went into Navy,
Okay.
who was so supportive. He was a
Mm.
sponsor. He was a family friend who said,
Mm.
if you want to do this and you
Hmm.
know what what it would mean for your family. I did
Sure.
not want to stop and to alter my children's path to be the best they could be,
Sure.
right?
Hmm.
And so we need to be able to afford to keep them in schools and to
Yep.
do all those things. And so um, I went into the Navy, signed up and said,
Wow.
I will die for my country. I actually
Mm.
said, so,
Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
yeah. And when you say that, it's not, you don't take it lightly,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you got to think about what that means. And so
Mm.
I enlisted, went into the military, and they paid for all of my medical education.
Got it.
At the same time, they paid for your medical education, gave you a stipend, right?
Hmm.
So it
Yeah.
still gave my family some ways, means to
Yeah.
continue to
Absolutely.
have the lifestyle that they had. So
Okay.
there's a lot that thought that I had to go through to think about
Hmm.
it. I mean, it's not that I sat there. We just had, okay, this is something you want to do. So now how can you afford it? And then
Yeah.
now, so it was strategically looking at how we can do this, but ultimately looking at the end result,
Yeah.
because we know we're looking ahead, right?
Sure.
Looking at what it meant to our family, our communities,
Mm.
you know, what it meant to medicine,
Yeah.
because I was always being told that, African American providers, physicians,
Hmm.
clinicians
Yep.
it's like money in the bank, because it's these are assets. In
Sure.
in the moment that you understand that you're an asset,
Yeah.
and that you can be significant,
Mm.
then it will
Mm.
make a difference.
Yeah.
We all want to leave legacies. We all want to make sure that we've
Yeah.
done all we could do. So
Yeah.
that was an interesting switch. And it didn't go without, lots of tears, lots of,
Sure.
how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
Before the decision was made.
Yeah.
So,
Man, that is but so powerful. I mean, just a couple of things that you shared, and the fact that you were able to, literally be an example for your children for what you were teaching them, right? When you were saying that before, like, understanding, like, more about our past and kind of where we came from while still being focused on the future. And you just reiterated that, in making that decision, it was still focusing on the future and the impact that you were going to have, even if there was going to be, potentially some sort of discomfort, which it sounds like, that commitment to, the military, and thank you for that commitment, was a way to kind of mitigate, a little bit of that. And I'm imagining that even some of those decisions, frankly, help you, even in some of the leadership roles and stuff that you've done before, right? Because I know personally as a leader of an org, at times we're always looking for ways to potentially mitigate things that, could be impactful to us or the people who report to us or their families and, all of those things. So, I mean, man, to be able to do that at 34, that's just unbelievable. And kudos to your husband, as well. That's
Oh, I tell you. So, I mean, and I couldn't have done it without a mate who was going to be supportive.
Mhm.
I think that, and we've been together for 43 years this year. So it is really a
Congrats.
matter of of the partnership, and it's
Yeah.
really making sure that we are taking care of one another. And I think that's
Mhm.
so important for people to think about
Yeah.
those commitments.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I mean, let's fast forward a little bit. I mean, I am so intrigued because just as our friendship continues to grow, I did not know this. So this is unbelievable. I'm learning this as well. This is great. Um, so you make the commitment to the Navy. You go to med school. Was this all in Alabama? At that point, did you have to
No,
move,
I
right?
had
Because
to move.
you're gonna. I know I'm very familiar with the application process and all that kind of stuff. So, what happened there?
So I had to move. So I was accepted only in three universities,
Mhm.
right? So I was an older student.
Mhm.
And so, that whole issue of where you actually going to be
Yeah,
accepted.
absolutely.
And I had applied all over the place, and just because, but I wanted to stay wherever close to where my husband was.
Of course.
So I applied, of course, to Morehouse, and because I was
Yep.
in Alabama, so
Yeah.
closest place would be to go
With
to
Georgia.
Atlanta
Of
and go to
course.
Georgia.
Yeah.
And then and some other schools, but I also applied here in Pittsburgh.
Oh.
And that was strategic because of family, right?
Of course.
So we thought about that, and so I get accepted. I get accepted into Morehouse,
Mhm.
and my husband is the vice president of Tuskegee, and I really
Shout
can't.
out to all the amazing HBCUs out there.
Oh my God! And so I literally can't leave at this moment. I just felt like it was not the time for me to leave my husband and my
Of course.
children
Yep.
because he couldn't leave. He was tied to this job, and my mom came and she helped, a whole lot. And so I had lots of support, but I asked to defer for that reason, and I said I'd like to defer just 1 year, just because we need to unpack some things and how are we going to do this and how is it going to work out.
Mhm.
And believe it or not, I was told no. Yes, I was told no. That this is your shot. You take it, you leave it, right? And it might have had something to do with the fact that I was older, and they didn't want, and they were taking a chance on me, which I'm sure they were, and
Sure.
um, so I didn't go, and then I got accepted also to University of Pittsburgh. And the University of Pittsburgh said, "We'll wait for you." And I thought, okay. So I took that year and really made a difference in preparing to leave my family because I wanted to leave my husband there to really do some of the things he wanted to do as in that position.
Mhm.
And had my mom come, and it was very interesting because it wasn't time for them to leave. My husband to leave.
Yeah.
And so I took that journey back to Pittsburgh, and it was a journey because I was by myself. I came back initially. I have a family here.
Yeah.
I initially lived with my sister, and then I moved into a place on my own. But I was by myself.
Mm.
I had not been by myself for many years.
Mm.
So as a woman, I was always so very cautious.
Mhm.
As a mother, I was always so very guilty.
Mm.
Right? I mean,
Mm.
the guilt that I experienced during my first year of medical school almost took me out of medical school.
Mm. Especially in your first year, man.
Yes,
Mercy.
yes. So the
Mercy.
you got to dig in. I mean, you go underground basically. And
Yeah.
I left three young children
Mm.
down in Tuskegee with my mother and my husband. But it was the mother, the nurturing of thinking. I had I had done something that was career minded
Yeah.
when maybe I should be home making cookies, you
Sure.
know,
Yeah.
and that's a really difficult decision for
Mm.
women to make alone internally.
Yeah.
And then men around you
Hmm.
sometimes don't make it easy at all. Now, my
Oh,
husband was very supportive, right?
sure.
But it was, others around us.
Oh man.
Like, this is
All
crazy.
that noise.
Like, what are you doing? All that noise,
All that noise.
yeah,
Yeah.
family members, friends, But it was really important for my husband and I to really pull together
Yeah.
and decide that we were going to do what we were going to do together.
Hmm.
And so I made the journey, and the first year was probably the toughest year of my life. And so I made it through. I mean, it was but it was not without those feelings and those the really difficult the emotions that go into the mothering portion
Hmm.
that I left. So that was very,
Yeah.
very difficult for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, just powerful, powerful lesson, especially around, as I mentioned, kind of like blocking out the noise, right? And being able to kind of keep your circle small when you're pursuing something that's, even bigger than yourself, right?
Right,
And
right.
and once again, as you're talking about the future and focus on the impact to the community and all of those things, at times, once again, just what's the saying? Like, you can't tell everybody your dreams, right?
Right, right.
Uh, you just had to keep your head down. But
I just
but
wanted to add to what you just
no,
said.
please go.
So, Donnie, so we insulated ourselves. We basically,
Hmm.
and I used to describe it as you think about, being inside of a bubble or being inside of a balloon, right?
Yeah,
If you blow up a balloon, and the pressure a balloon can take,
sure.
just watch your kids play with them. And so we kind of put ourselves in that space and
Mm,
really were careful about who we let in.
hmm.
We were really careful about some of the folks that were causing us a lot of pressure on the outside of that,
Mm, mm,
because we needed to mitigate that so that the balloon didn't break.
mm. This is good.
Very, very,
This is good.
yeah, yes,
This
yes.
is
And
good.
so, and we would talk about this, and
Yeah.
how we would, we made maintain those pressures, on
Okay.
the inside. And
Hmm.
so the pressures on the outside get to be so much that it caused it to break or to,
Mm,
so it was a great time for bonding and for
hmm.
coming together. It was a great time for really firming up the dream
Yeah.
that we knew couldn't happen if we had all of the noise and all the pressure that could have come.
Yeah.
And granted, we had pressure. We
Yeah.
had lots of things going on the outside that could have derailed the dream.
Mm, 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 mm.
But my dream was my husband's dream. You know,
Yeah.
we had to, yeah, it was both. It's like, we got to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Powerful, 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 powerful. And I want to I always want to be cognizant of our time, together, because I think that we could go so deep, just in all these lessons. But as we begin to kind of wind down our conversation today, um, you know, you made it through. It's like we know kind of what a little bit about, we could fast forward, we know that you made it through. We know that you're still married, right? It's gonna hit 40 years. So you made it through as a family. Um, and now you are, once again, you've practiced and, done some of those things. And I know that you've once again had some leadership roles, not only kind of in the greater Cleveland area, but are currently in Pittsburgh. Even still, and kind of recently, moved back to take on, funny enough, a role that really it is mind blowing that it's so connected back to why you started on this journey in the first place,
Yes, yes.
right? So, I mean, how does that feel to not only live out, kind of your dream of being a physician, but I mean, to be working in your purpose that you kind of like manifested and spoke into so many years ago.
Absolutely. It's really, it says a lot for dreaming, and it
Hmm.
says a lot for not giving up your dream. And if that,
Mm.
tell anybody that it's really being strategic and focusing and making sure that it's your dream,
Hmm.
and don't let anyone derail that, because being here is, we think about Maslow's hierarchy, right?
Hmm.
And so being at the top of that hierarchy, and you have all of these other needs that you've taken care of, you got a place to
Yeah.
sleep, place to eat, whatever. But having that self-actualization, or you're
Mm.
in a position where you're using every skill that you have accumulated over the many years
Yeah.
to really strategically make a difference.
Hmm.
And not only a difference in when people, this is a large institution, of course, but it's a difference in every single life that comes through here.
Hmm.
Because, in my space, in diversity, equity, inclusion, I see everybody has to take this journey
Mm.
in order to have better outcomes.
Hmm.
It's not only just the governance of the C-suite,
Hmm.
which should start there,
Yeah.
but it has to trickle all the way down to the environmental service workers,
Absolutely.
everybody who's going to make a difference. But
Hmm.
this space is a space that I am enjoying so much,
Yeah.
because it is that opportunity to potentially leave another legacy.
Hmm.
My children are my first legacy. You know, my children are my first. It's they're great young men who are accomplished. So that's already done.
Mm.
It's that the space we spend. I think it was 90,000 hours of our life
Hmm.
in our workplace.
Mm.
You know, and so I mean, think about all those hours.
Yeah.
Now, I think it should be more. I mean, when I think about the time we spend here, right? We spend at these desks and doing all these things we do.
Yeah.
To have that make a significant difference in other
Hmm.
people's lives is what DE&I is all about.
Mm.
And what better place, to get kicked around than DE&I,
For a good cause. For a good cause. For a
Right.
good cause. Yeah. Um, Man, as we're winding down, one, thank you so much for this. I think, even in this condensed time that we're spending together, just the gems that you have dropped and shared have been significant. Where can folks find you? By the way, by the way, I know that you've written a book, and so where can folks kind of look for that, because as we're talking about your life, I mean, just that season of your life, so many nuggets and powerful things that you shared with us today. Where can folks find you, follow you, etc.?
Well, I'm all over social media.
You are.
Just like I can talk a whole lot. So
I
I'm
follow
all,
you on Instagram, so I do
I
know
am
that
I
you're on
am
Instagram.
all over the place. You'll see me. Uh, my opinion. I give you a platform, and I'm going to actually tell you how I feel and what I think. So I love it. Love it. My book, it can be found on Amazon, and
Okay.
the title is "The Colors of My Heart:
Mm.
Embracing My Blackness with History, Family, Fear, and Faith." It's
Oh.
I think it encompasses the life of an African American woman born as a coal miner's daughter, you know,
Mm.
and then how I moved through this life of mine,
Hmm.
with all of the ups and downs, triumphs, and really to land on top of what I consider to
Yeah.
be my joy. And
Okay.
that's, no matter what's around me,
Hmm.
it's all about where I'm finding the joy
Yeah.
where I continue to get filled up. And this is the place. So I'm at Allegheny Health Network,
Hmm.
and see the chief diversity officer, the SVP. My
Hmm.
book is on Amazon.
We will put a link to it in the show notes, when we put this up on YouTube and otherwise. So that is absolutely fantastic. Dr. Margaret Larkins-Pettigrew, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Everyone, thank you for listening. This has been the Only Dream Big pod, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.